The low, functional light of the bridge did little to soften the severe lines of Captain Eva Rostova's face. For 3 years, her reflection had been a ghost superimposed over the star-scattered masterpiece beyond the forward viewport. A constant, silent companion. The whisper of recycled air was the ship's breath. The faint hum of the gravitic plates, its heartbeat. But today, the silence felt different. It was heavier, charged with the weight of arrival. The stargazer, her ship, her extension in the void, seemed to be holding that breath. Her hands rested on the cold, unyielding railing, an anchor in a sea of endless wonder that had long ago lost its ability to soothe. 500 light-years from home, wonder was a luxury. Caution was a currency. That was the lesson of the Orion incident, a lesson etched into her service record and her soul. A moment of hesitation, a choice to follow protocol to the letter, had cost them a discovery that could have advanced humanity by a century. A different captain might have been broken by the failure. For Rostova, it had forged a new, sharper resolve. She would not make that mistake again. Behind her, the bridge crew moved with the quiet efficiency of a veteran team, a ballet of practiced professionalism honed by 1,000 days of shared isolation. At the science station, Dr. Eris Thorne, a man whose wiry frame seemed to vibrate with a constant current of intellectual energy, leaned so close to his holographic display that his nose nearly touched the shimmering blue light. He hadn't slept in 72 hours, a fact confirmed by the discarded nutrient paste bulbs littering his console and the faint tremor in his hands as they danced across the controls. His whispers were a running commentary of awe, a stream of scientific reverence that grated on Rostova's nerves. He wasn't just chasing a scientific anomaly. He was chasing the ghost of his mentor, Dr. Lenora Vance, a brilliant mind ruined for proposing the very theories Thorne was now on the verge of proving. For Eris, this was more than science. It was vindication. Thorne said, "Incredible. The gravimetric distortions are off the scale, but they're stable, like a standing wave in the ocean of space-time. The sheer energy required to maintain such a structure is astronomical. It defies all known models of natural phenomena. It isn't a singularity, it isn't a star. It's a knot, Eva. A knot tied in the very fabric of reality by hands we can't yet comprehend." Rostova's focus remained fixed on the phenomenon that had dragged them across the galaxy. It wasn't a planet or a star or any celestial body catalogued by humanity. It was a rupture, a shimmering, swirling, fractal wound in the fabric of reality, rippling like liquid glass under a blazing, unseen sun. The anomaly. For generations, it had been a myth. A ghost story told by deep space freighters about a place where the stars went mad. A cosmic Bermuda Triangle where ships simply vanished. Thorne's theories, Vance's legacy, had convinced the Exploration Command that the ghost was worth chasing. He had staked his reputation on it. She had staked her crew's lives. Now the ghost filled their viewport, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Rostova said, "Kalen, report. Energy emissions. Are we looking at a weapon?" Her voice was calm, a practiced mask for the storm of anticipation churning within her. From the engineering and communications console, Kalen Pax looked up. He was young, barely 25, but his mind was a universe of systems and code. His hands moved over the controls with a surgeon's precision, his consciousness seemingly hardwired into the stargazer's digital soul. He pushed a pair of thick-rimmed glasses up his nose, his expression a familiar mix of caution and curiosity. Kalen said, "No directed energy, Captain. No weapon profiles. The energy is gravitational, but it's not radiating in a way that threatens the hull. The exotic particle count, however, is off the charts. We're seeing tachyons, chronotons, particles that shouldn't exist outside of Thorne's wildest theories. He paused, his fingers freezing over the console. And Captain, the ship's clock. It's already out of sync with Earth's chronometer by 0.003 microseconds. The effect is increasing exponentially as we get closer. This thing isn't just bending space, it's twisting time. Thorne spun in his chair, his face alight with the fervor of a prophet vindicated. He gestured dramatically at the viewport. Thorne said, "Don't you see, Eva? This isn't just a hole in space, it's a gateway. The energy signature is consistent with a stabilized Einstein-Rosen bridge, a wormhole, but not a natural one. This was built, deliberately." Rostova's gaze met Thorne's in the reflection on the viewport. She had known Aris for 20 years, since their days at the academy where his brilliant, unorthodox ideas had earned him as much trouble as praise. She trusted his science, but his boundless enthusiasm often overlooked the dangers she was trained to anticipate. Rostova said, "Built by whom, Aris? And for what purpose?" The long-range scans show nothing on the other side. No star systems, no energy sources. Just more void. Thorne said, "The void is the point. This could lead to another galaxy, another dimension, a place beyond our concepts of distance. This is the discovery that will define our species. It's the answer to Fermi's paradox, the reason the sky is silent. They didn't use radio waves. They bent space to their will." A calm, melodic chime echoed across the bridge, and the holographic face of Commander Varens, their mission controller, materialized above the central console. His features were stern, carved from a lifetime of difficult decisions made light years away. His image flickered slightly, the data stream struggling against the immense distance and the gravitational interference of the anomaly. Varens said, "Stargazer, this is command. We have your final approach data. Dr. Thorne, the science directorate is ecstatic. They're already drafting your Nobel acceptance speech. They're also reminding me that you are 500 light years from the nearest tow ship, so try to keep the ship in one piece." Rostova allowed herself a small, tight smile. Rostova said, "We read you, Commander. The crew is proceeding with caution." Varens said, "See that you do. Your mission is to observe, analyze, and report. You are not, I repeat, not authorized to enter the anomaly without a direct command from us. The risks are unquantifiable." Thorne opened his mouth to protest, his scientific zeal warring with military protocol, but Rostova silenced him with a single, sharp look. Rostova said, "Understood, Command. We will maintain our position at the perimeter and continue data collection." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge once again in a charged silence. The ship glided closer, its powerful sensors drinking in every detail of the swirling vortex. It was beautiful, terrifying, and utterly alien. The edge of the portal was a blur of fractal patterns, constantly folding in on themselves, colors shifting from deep violet to incandescent gold. It didn't just hang in space, it seemed to breathe, the gravitational waves pulsing like a slow, cosmic heartbeat. Kalen's voice was quiet, laced with a tension that mirrored Rostova's own. Kalen said, "Captain, I'm picking up something new. A resonance. It's faint, almost like a harmonic echo from the portal's core." He manipulated his controls, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface, filtering out the background noise of the cosmos. A low melodic hum filled the bridge. It was a sound that seemed to vibrate, not in the air, but deep within their bones. A pure, structured tone that cut through the chaos of the portal's energy emissions. Thorne was captivated, his head cocked as if listening to a symphony. Thorne said, "It's a signal. It has structure. It's a welcome." Rostova said, "Or a warning." She felt the weight of her command settle upon her shoulders. Generations of explorers had dreamed of this moment, the first true contact with the unknown. But with that dream came a responsibility that was hers alone. The fate of her ship, her crew, rested on her judgment. She thought of the old maps, the star charts humanity had so painstakingly scribed with dreams and ambition. They all ended here, at this uncharted shore. She took a deep breath, the recycled air tasting of ozone and anticipation. The mission parameters were clear: observe and report. But standing here on the precipice of the greatest discovery in human history, she knew that wasn't enough. Humanity hadn't crossed the stars to stand on the shore and watch the waves. They had come to sail the ocean. Her decision crystallized, solid and clear as the viewport before her. She would not risk her crew without cause, but the potential reward, the answer to the question of whether humanity was truly alone, was a cause worth any risk. Rostova said, "Kalin, open a secure channel to Commander Varens. I'm sending him a formal request for permission to proceed. I'm citing the discovery of a structured signal as evidence of non-natural origin, warranting immediate close-range investigation." Thorne's face broke into a wide grin. Kalin, though visibly nervous, nodded, and his fingers flew across the console. As the encrypted data packet shot across the light years toward Earth, Rostova turned her full attention back to the portal. Her gaze met her own reflection, and in the depths of her eyes, she saw the same look she'd seen in the portraits of every great explorer. From Magellan to Armstrong, it was a look of fear, of hope, and of an unyielding determination to step into the void. The wait for a reply was an exercise in temporal distortion. Each minute stretched, filled with the quiet hum of the ship and the silent, swirling dance of the anomaly. The crew remained at their posts, a study in disciplined patience. Finally, the comms chimed. Commander Varens' face reappeared, his expression unreadable. Varens said, "Captain Rostova, your request has been debated vigorously." He paused, and for a moment, Rostova thought he would deny them. Varens continued, "The Directorate has approved your request. The potential discovery outweighs the risk. You are authorized to proceed with a single, controlled entry. Your orders are to enter, gather preliminary data for no more than 5 minutes, and immediately return. You will maintain a live data feed at all times. Is that understood?" A collective, unspoken sigh of relief washed over the bridge. Rostova said, "Understood, Commander. We will not let you down." Varens nodded, a flicker of something that might have been pride in his eyes. Varens said, "Godspeed, Stargazer." Varens out. The moment had come. Rostova's voice was calm, steady, betraying none of the thunderous beating of her own heart. Rostova said, "All hands, prepare for transition. Kalin, bring the forward deflector shields to full power. Modulate them to the portal's energy frequency. Eris, I want every sensor recording. Let's go make history." The ship's engines rumbled, a deep resonance that vibrated through the deck. The Stargazer began to move, inching closer to the shimmering gateway. The light from the portal washed over the bridge, casting ethereal, dancing shadows across the eager faces of the crew. As the ship's bow touched the edge of the anomaly, the world outside the viewport dissolved into a torrent of light and color. The ship shuddered, a violent, bone-jarring tremor that threw Thorne against his console. Alarms blared, a cacophony of shrieking warnings. Kalin yelled over the noise, "Gravitational shear is off the charts. The deflectors can't compensate. Hull integrity is dropping." Rostova gripped the railing, her knuckles white. The transition was not the gentle passage Thorn had predicted. It was a storm, a cosmic maelstrom that threatened to tear them apart. Rostova said, "Keep us steady, Kalen. Full power to the structural integrity field." The world twisted. Stars stretched into incandescent lines, then collapsed into a swirling vortex of pure energy. The ship groaned, the sound of stressed metal a scream of protest against the impossible physics of the wormhole. For a moment that stretched into an eternity. There was only the chaos, the light, the noise. Then, as suddenly as it began, it was over. The ship fell into a profound silence. The alarms cut out. The shuddering stopped. Outside the viewport, there was only blackness. A deep, absolute, starless black. Kalen's voice was a ragged whisper. Kalen said, "We're through. Ship-wide diagnostics are running. Multiple system failures, but the core drive is stable. Life support is intact." Thorn picked himself up from the floor, a trickle of blood running from a cut on his forehead. He ignored it, his eyes wide with a mixture of terror and wonder as he stared into the void. Thorn said, "Where are we?" Rostova's heart hammered against her ribs. The 5-minute clock had started. Rostova said, "Kalen, what are the sensors reading? Where's the exit portal?" Kalen's hands flew over his console, his face pale in the glow of the display. Kalen said, I don't know, Captain. There's nothing. No energy readings, no gravity wells, no background radiation. It's like we're outside the universe." He looked up, his eyes wide with fear. Kalen continued, "And the data linked to command? It's gone. The moment we entered, it was severed. We're alone." The word hung in the air, colder and more terrifying than the void outside. Alone. 500 light years from home, trapped in a place that shouldn't exist. The thrill of discovery had vanished, replaced by the cold, primal fear of the unknown. Rostova forced the fear down. She was the captain. Her crew was looking to her. She had to be their anchor. Rostova said, "All right, we stick to the plan. We have 4 minutes to gather what data we can. Then we find our way back. Aris, what can you tell me about this place?" Thorn, his scientific curiosity overriding his fear, was already at his station. Thorn said, "The physics here are impossible. The laws of thermodynamics seem to be optional. But I am detecting faint, residual energy trails, like wakes left by other ships." Before Rostova could process that staggering implication, a new alarm began to chime, soft but insistent. It was a priority message from the ship's internal chronometer. Kalen's head snapped toward his display. Kalen said, "Captain, that's impossible." Rostova said, "What is it, Kalen?" Kalen said, "The ship's clock. It's reporting a temporal discrepancy. According to our internal systems, we've been in here for 3 hours." The silence that followed was absolute. 3 hours. They had experienced only a few minutes. The time dilation was immense. What did that mean for the outside universe? Had 3 hours passed for them or for Earth? The mission was spiraling out of control, every new piece of information deepening the mystery and the danger. Rostova's mind raced. They had to get back. Now Rostova said, "Kalen, can you trace our entry vector? We need to find the way out." Kalen's fingers danced across the console. Kalen said, "I'm trying, but the distortion scrambled our navigation logs on entry. It's like trying to find a single grain of sand on a beach." But wait, I'm picking up that resonance again. The signal from the portal's core. It's faint, but it's there. It's coming from that direction. He pointed to a section of the void that was indistinguishable from the rest. It was their only lead. Rostova said, "Take us there." Slow and steady. The stargazer moved through the silent, oppressive blackness, its searchlights cutting uselessly into the infinite dark. As they followed the faint signal, a shape began to resolve out of the void. It was massive, far larger than their own vessel, and utterly alien in design. It was a ship, but it looked more like a cathedral of bone and shadow, its hull a lattice of dark, crystalline structures. It was derelict, silent, and ancient. Thorn whispered, "My God, it's a ship graveyard. The energy trails, they all lead here." As they drew closer, they saw that the derelict was not alone. Other ships drifted nearby, a silent fleet of ghosts from 1,000 different worlds and 1,000 different eras. Some were sleek and metallic, others organic and coral-like. All were dead, their hulls breached, their lights dark. And at the center of the graveyard, the derelict cathedral pulsed with a faint, rhythmic light, the source of the signal. Kalen said, "Captain, I'm getting a new reading. A high-energy event is forming at our entry point. The portal, it's becoming unstable." Rostova's blood ran cold. They had to get back before it collapsed and trapped them here forever. But the derelict held answers. The choice was stark: escape into uncertainty or risk everything for a chance at understanding. Her decision was instantaneous. Rostova said, "Aris, Kalen, you're with me. We're boarding that ship. The 1-hour clock is a ghost. We're on borrowed time. Let's make it count." The short-range shuttle, the Mayfly, cut through the void, its landing struts clanking against the crystalline hull of the derelict with a sound that echoed only in the minds of its 3 occupants. The airlock hissed open, and they stepped into a corridor that seemed carved from solidified night. The air was thin, cold, and carried the scent of ozone and dust 1 billion years old. Their helmet lights sliced through the oppressive darkness, revealing walls covered in elegant, flowing script that glowed with a faint, internal luminescence. Thorn ran a gloved hand over the script, his voice filled with a reverence that bordered on madness. Thorn said, "This is a language, incredibly complex. It's not written, it's grown into the hull itself. The entire ship is a single, living circuit." They moved deeper into the silent vessel, their magnetic boots echoing in the vast, empty chambers. They found what could only be a bridge, a cavernous space dominated by a raised platform holding a single, throne-like chair. The room was a scene of ancient, silent violence. The crystalline walls were scarred with a black, corrosive substance that seemed to absorb the light from their helmets. The remains of the crew, beings of impossible grace and height, were slumped at their stations, their elegant forms little more than dust and memory, their robes of unknown fabric crumbling at the slightest vibration. There was no hologram, no helpful ghost, just a tomb. Rostova's gaze was drawn to the throne. The being there was the largest, its long-limbed body draped over the seat, as if it had died in a moment of profound despair. One of its 4-fingered hands was outstretched, reaching for a console that had gone dark millennia ago. Rostova said, "Iris, what killed them? Was it a weapon?" Thorn moved to the central console, his tricorder already working, its chimes and whistles sounding like sacrilege in the hallowed silence. Thorn said, "No, not a weapon. The energy signatures are wrong. The damage to the hull, it's not from an impact or a blast. It's a localized failure of physics, as if for a microsecond, the strong nuclear force just gave up. These beings, their ship, they weren't killed. They were unwritten." Kalen joined him, kneeling to connect a portable interface from his kit to a port on the alien console. The port shimmered with a faint light, and Kalen recoiled as a jolt of static electricity snapped across the gap. Kalen said, "The architecture is organic, alive on some level. It's fighting me. I can try to build a translation matrix, but it's going to take time. And Captain, I'll have to bypass our own system safeties to even attempt it. If this thing has any dormant defense systems, it could wipe our shuttle's computers, or worse." Rostova looked at the silent figures around them, at the dust that was once a civilization. Rostova said, "We have no choice. Do it." The next several hours were an agonizing crawl into the mind of a dead civilization. Kalen, his face illuminated by the glow of his interface, fought a silent war against the alien machine. It wasn't a matter of cracking code. It was a battle of philosophies. The Weaver computer didn't think in binary, but in resonant probabilities. To communicate, Kalen had to abandon human logic, building a translation matrix that was less a program and more a sympathetic vibration, a piece of code that had to feel its way to an answer. Twice, the alien system lashed out, sending feedback surges that nearly fried his interface and forced him to reboot, each failure costing them precious time. Meanwhile, Thorn, with a reverence that bordered on madness, worked to decipher the ship's logs. They weren't written records, but stored patterns of energy, memories embedded in the crystalline structure of the ship itself. He managed to extract fragments, corrupted data that flickered across his portable display like ghosts. Thorn said, his voice a hushed whisper, "I'm getting something, a name. They called themselves the Weavers, this place, this void. They called it the Nexus, a space between realities. The gateways were their creation. They talk about traveling the great ocean of what could be." He pointed to a scorch mark on the wall, a patch of absolute blackness that seemed to drink the light. "That's not a weapon scar. It's a point of non-existence. I'm reading nothing. Not empty space, but the absence of space itself. The Unravelers, they called them, the Eaters of Causality." A new horror began to dawn on Rostova. She looked at the star charts flickering on Thorn's display, reconstructed from the Weaver's data. They showed not just galaxies, but shimmering tapestries of cause and effect, strands of reality woven together. And at the edges of the tapestry, dark, amorphous shapes moved, consuming the threads, leaving behind only gray, unraveled nothingness. Rostova said, "The planet killer. It's not an object, is it? It's them." Thorn nodded slowly, his face pale. Thorn said, "When we breached the gateway, we didn't just open a door. We sent a shockwave of our own reality's resonance back through it. We rang the dinner bell. The weight of that guilt was a physical blow, heavier than any gravity. Their act of discovery was the cause of Earth's doom." Rostova's voice was tight, strained. Rostova said, "How do we stop it? How did they try to stop it?" Thorn said, "They didn't. They ran. They built this place as a fortress, a final bastion. They sealed the gateways, one by one, using this ship as a master key to lock them. Its core, the heart of the Nexus, generated the sealing frequency." He pointed to the dead throne. But they failed. The Unravelers found them. They couldn't fight them, only delay them. Kalen, sweat beading on his forehead, looked up from his interface, his eyes wide with terror. Kalen said, "I'm in. I've bypassed their primary security. I'm accessing the final log entry. It's not a message. It's a calculation, a desperate, last-ditch, theoretical equation." He read from his screen, his voice trembling slightly. Causality resonance failure. The heart is failing. The last seal has broken. The shadows are at the door. We theorize a focused inverse phase resonance pulse could recalibrate a gateway from the destination point, effectively resealing it from the other side. But the energy requirements are total. It would require the sacrifice of the source vessel. We lack the power. We lack the time. May whatever comes after forgive us. Rostova's mind raced. Not a blueprint, a theory, a suicide mission they didn't have the power to attempt. Rostova said, "Kalen, can we use this equation? Can we make it work?" Kalen shook his head, his face ashen. Kalen said, "Captain, this is theoretical physics that makes Eris's work look like kindergarten. It's a hypothesis. They didn't know if it would work. And to even try, we'd have to adapt it to our own technology, our own sun-specific gravitational and causal signature. The calculations would be immense. We'd need to slave the Stargazer's entire computer core to the task. And even then, the chance of error is astronomical." Thorn added, his voice grim. Thorn said, "He's right, Eva. If we get the math wrong, we wouldn't just fail to seal the gateway. We could make it worse. We could turn our sun into a beacon for every one of those things in this graveyard. We could doom not just our reality, but every reality connected to this nexus." Rostova looked at the dead weavers, at their magnificent, silent tomb. They had run, and they had failed. Humanity had come to sail the ocean, not to stand on the shore. Her decision was instantaneous, born of a terrible, cold certainty. Rostova said, "We are not running. We are not failing. We are going to finish what they started. Kalen, get back to the Stargazer. Slave the core. Run the calculations. Eris, you're with me. We need to figure out how to turn this ship's core, the heart of the Nexus, into the amplifier for our signal. We have one chance. We will not waste it." The return to the Stargazer was a frantic, desperate flight. Kalen, his mind already a maelstrom of impossible physics, immediately slaved his console to the ship's main computational core, the hum of the processors rising to an audible whine throughout the bridge. Thorn began rerouting power, his face a grim mask of determination as he bypassed one safety protocol after another, diverting energy from life support, from the artificial gravity, from every system deemed non-essential for the next crucial minutes. The lights on the bridge dimmed to a blood-red emergency glow, and the air grew cold and thin. Rostova stood at the central command console, coordinating their efforts, her mind a whirlwind of calculations and risk assessments. Rostova said, "Kalen, what's your status?" Kalen said, not looking up from the cascading lines of code that reflected in his glasses, "The Weaver's equation is elegant, terrifyingly so. It's a model for inverting a causality feedback loop. But it's just a model. I have to write the actual code, tailored to our sun's specific mass, energy output, and quantum signature. It's like they gave us the theory of music, and now I have to compose a symphony in 5 minutes." Thorn's voice was tight with strain from the engineering console. Thorn said, "And we don't have 5 minutes. The portal is degrading. The energy required to keep it open is fluctuating wildly. It could collapse at any moment." Rostova said, "Kalen, can you do it?" Kalen's fingers flew across the console, a blur of motion. Kalen said, I think so. But Captain, the power requirements to transmit a signal of this complexity, it will take everything we have. The main reactor will have to be pushed into the red. If we do this, there's no guarantee we'll have enough power left to get home." Rostova's voice was cold steel. Rostova said, "There is no home to get back to if we fail. Do it." As Kalen worked, a new chilling development appeared on the sensor displays. The void outside was no longer empty. Shadows were gathering, coalescing out of the nothingness. They were vast, amorphous, and utterly terrifying, their forms seeming to defy geometry, their presence a chilling void where light and hope could not exist. Thorne's voice was a choked whisper. Thorne said, "They're here. The energy we're drawing. It's attracting them. They're coming for us." The ship shuddered as the first of the shadows brushed against the hull. It was not an impact, but a cessation. The lights flickered, and for a moment, the hum of the ship died, replaced by an absolute, terrifying silence. Then the power returned, the emergency lights flickering back to life. Kalen yelled, "Hull breach in Sector 7. No, wait, not a breach. The hull is just gone. Erased. The structural integrity field is holding, but it won't last." Rostova knew they were out of time. The Weavers had built a fortress, and it had failed. The Stargazer was a paper boat in a hurricane. She looked at Thorne, at Kalen, at the silent, ghostly fleet outside. She thought of Earth, of the blue and green sphere hanging in the void, not knowing that its fate was being decided in a place beyond reality. There was no choice. There was only duty. Rostova said, "Kalen, the symphony. Is it ready?" Kalen looked up, his face slick with sweat, his eyes wide with a terrifying mixture of triumph and fear. Kalen said, "It's done. The code is compiled. It's beautiful. But Captain, to transmit it, I have to bypass the final safeties on the reactor. It will create a cascade failure. The ship, it won't survive the transmission." The words hung in the air, heavier than any star. A suicide mission, not for one, but for all of them. Rostova looked at her crew, at Thorne, who had chased a ghost story to the edge of reality, at Kalen, the boy genius who was now being asked to sign their death warrant. She saw the fear in their eyes, but she also saw a resolve that mirrored her own. They were a crew. They were a family. And they would die together. Rostova said, "Do it, Kalen. All power to the main transmitter." The ship's engines whined, the sound rising to a piercing scream as Kalen diverted all power, shunting the entire output of the fusion core into the transmission array. The lights on the bridge died completely, plunging them into darkness, save for the hellish red glow of the warning klaxons. The ship groaned, the sound of stressed metal a final scream of protest. A beam of pure data, of concentrated hope, of humanity's last, desperate gamble. Shot from the Stargazer's transmission array, aimed at the heart of the collapsing wormhole. The shadows surged toward them, their tendrils of nothingness reaching for the ship, sensing the feast of reality that was being offered. The ship shuddered again, more violently this time, as another piece of its hull was unwritten from existence. Kalen yelled into the darkness, his voice cracking with the strain. "The transmission is away! It's through!" Rostova gripped the railing, her knuckles white, as the ship began to tear itself apart around them. She saw the forward viewport crack, the lines spreading like a spider web across the diamond-fused quartz. She saw a console explode in a shower of sparks. She saw Thorne thrown from his station, his body limp. And in the final moment, as the world dissolved into a torrent of light and fire and non-existence, she allowed herself a single, fleeting thought. Not of fear, not of regret, but of a blue and green sphere, hanging in the void, safe and sound. Thousands of light years away, on a small, insignificant planet orbiting a yellow star, alarms blared in the Planetary Defense Coordination Center. A graph on the main screen showed the planet's orbital decay, a steep, terrifying curve plunging toward catastrophe. The greatest minds on Earth could only watch, helpless, as their world was pulled from its orbit by a force they could not comprehend. Then, a new signal appeared. A burst of data from the long-lost stargazer, a signal that should have been impossible. It was not a message. It was a key, a set of instructions that the defense grid's AI immediately understood. The great orbital defense platforms, designed to deflect asteroids, swiveled in unison. They did not fire. They resonated. They pulsed with a low, harmonic frequency, a carefully orchestrated wave of gravitational energy that washed over the planet, countering the invisible tide that was pulling it to its doom. The curve on the graph stopped its terrifying plunge. It wavered. And then, slowly, miraculously, it began to climb back toward stability. In the command center, a stunned silence was broken by a single, choked sob of relief. They were saved. They did not know how. They did not know why. They only knew that a ghost from the darkness had reached out and pulled them back from the brink. The comms chimed, and Commander Varen's face appeared on the screen. He looked older, his face etched with the strain of the past few hours. He looked at the graph, at the climbing line that represented a world saved, and then at the empty space on the star chart where the stargazer was supposed to be. For a long moment, he simply looked, his eyes filled with a gratitude that was indistinguishable from grief. Varen said, to the silent, empty room, "Welcome home, Stargazer, and thank you." The journey of the Stargazer was over. But its story, the story of the crew who had sailed into the void and faced the shadows, who had traded their lives for their world, would be told for as long as humanity had stars to look at. It would be a story of wonders and terrors beyond imagination, and a warning that the universe was far larger, far stranger, and far more dangerous than they had ever known. And that sometimes, the price of knowledge is everything. The silence on Earth was no longer the silence of ignorance, but the quiet, profound peace of a second chance. A chance bought with the courage of a captain and her crew, who had become the very thing they had set out to find. A legend whispered among the stars.